Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome. We're about to spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about Nozomi Arc, which is a brand new product for us. Before I do go on any further, just a quick show of hands. Anyone in the room, existing Nozomi customer, using us already? Wonderful, wonderful. Show of hands if you've at least heard of us before and are familiar with us. Wonderful, good stuff. Well, thank you for coming, guys, again. This is really exciting. For us today, we get to talk about a brand new piece of the product that we've launched as of about a week ago. It's gone GA. As you can see, it is called Nozomi Arc, and it is our endpoint sensor. Brand new, like I mentioned, to the Nozomi family. It is our endpoint sensor, which enables you with immediate visibility. What we're bringing to the table is continuous monitoring, in addition to combining network and asset detections. So we're able to, of course, see everything that's happening on the network already. Now we're bringing in that context from the endpoint. At the end of the day, it provides you with a much more accurate view with contextualized information of what's going on within your environment. Plus, it's a very non-disruptive and low-impact sensor. Interestingly enough, we're here at ARC to talk about ARC, which is fantastic. And in our world, ARC, it's not an acronym, doesn't stand for anything. What is an ARC? Well, as we all know, an ARC is a spark of light that gives us visibility in the dark. Electricity signals moving from node to node is an ARC, providing intense illumination, which is exactly what we're hoping to do to some remote pockets and corners of your network. When it comes to deploying Nozomi Arc, we've got very scalable architectures that allow us to deploy in a 2 and a 3-tier model. For those of you familiar with us, we've got the traditional Guardian sensors, which are doing all the data interpretation, the inhaling of packets off the network. Below the Guardians, we will have remote collectors that are able to gather network information from remote corners of the network, bring them up to a Guardian. Of course, both of those layers can cascade up to Vantage, which is our cloud SaaS management platform. And Nozomi Arc, as you can see, slots right in there alongside remote collectors in being able to send in-depth asset network information up to the Guardian or directly into the management tier. Oh, this one doesn't look that great there. So this is something new that we're able to bring to the table is we can give network maps and diagrams based on the context of a specific host. So now I have a chance to see exactly every device this particular host is talking to. We bring this information up to the SaaS manager level, so we have visibility into individual conversations from host to host. Just like the rest of our family, the Nozomi architecture is extremely scalable. We're built to be deployed all across every level of the Purdue model. And as you can see here, it's very easy for us to strategically start implementing ARC agents where we have corners of the network that either have an unmanaged device, there might be a hub there. There's always dozens of reasons why it's not always easy or capable to put a sensor at the endpoint. So with the flexible deployment model being able to slot in anywhere, giving you much higher information fidelity for all parts of your network. As you can see here, Nozomi Arc fills a gap that we used to have and have customers telling us about with respect to the visibility. So at the top end, you can see we've always had our remote collectors, which were great. They were very purpose-built. They were built for the edge network deployments. We could provide continuous traffic monitoring as well as maintaining Purdue compliance. And then at the bottom of the stack, we had smart polling, which was being able to go out and actively interrogate devices. We come from a privileged position, so we've got access credentials to do this. We can talk directly to embedded devices, and there's no installation required. So there was a little bit of a gray area in the middle, which is exactly where Nozomi Arc slots in. The big 3 things that we're bringing to the table, number 1 is user activity correlation. So now instead of just knowing that this HMI is talking to this PLC, we can start to put some contextual awareness about the user behind that. Oh, this was Mike logged into the HMI at the time that this command was sent out. So we're starting to bring in that user correlation. Number 2, which is very important in our world, is USB monitoring. right? Smart polling is great in the sense that smart polling can go out, it can talk to a Windows machine, and I can see at that moment in time if there's a USB key plugged into it. What smart polling doesn't allow me to do is understand what is happening to that machine in between polling frequencies. So with USB monitoring from Nozomi Arc, we're giving that real-time detection of when users or people are plugging in and using USB ports, whether it's a thumb drive or a hard drive. We're bringing that real-time alert into the environment. In addition to that, we have the ability to go through the log files with Sigma rules now to not only look at network-based traffic, but now we're taking logs into account so we can really start to triangulate and narrow down any incidents or any abnormal behavior. In terms of deployment options, again, just like the rest of the family, we've got a lot of flexibility here. Number of customers are using some sort of MDM tool to manage their endpoints. We can absolutely integrate into that environment. Products like Microsoft Intune, for instance, we have the ability to be delivered in that method. Very convenient, obviously, if we're deploying into a large enterprise environment, maintaining complete adherence to the Purdue levels. Great thing about this model is there's no need to store credentials on our solution when it's distributed by something in-house that's taken care of. And again, the beauty of this solution is we can start to monitor assets without any network configuration. Our traditional solution requires to ingest span, ER span, TAP, some form of packet ingestion. However, once we can get to deploying with an agent like this, there's no need for us to touch the network anymore. The second deployment option is, of course, directly from our infrastructure, from the Guardian. The Guardian will store the credentials of the target machine, so say a Windows workstation, it will then log in, it will install the patch, and away we go. The big key there is the Guardians need connectivity to those target machines, so sometimes that's the reason we're deploying a lightweight sensor, is because we can't get network reach into every pocket of the network. Third method is, of course, manual installation. This is going to be great for offline devices, the ability for us to monitor them even if they're in an offline mode. Again, adhering to full Purdue compliance within the levels. Again, no need for credential storage. It's extremely lightweight. And again, allowing us to monitor these assets without any network configuration. The actual sensor itself has three kind of operational modes, if you will. And these are great, actually. They help delineate what type of use case we're going to be monitoring for. The first one is continuous mode, right? Pretty self-explanatory. This is the standard mode we deploy in, where Arc is continuously monitoring and reporting data back to either your Guardian or your Vantage tier. It's great for users who are wanting to run something like this on their endpoint machine, as well where the agents can have connectivity to the Guardian or Vantage. So this is your typical enterprise environment. We have lots of network connectivity. Everybody can talk to everyone everywhere, and we're all good to go. The second mode, which is quite interesting, is one shot. And I think this is pretty interesting for use cases where you may have machines that you can't keep an agent constantly running. Let's say a third-party contractor shows up, they need to plug into one of your secure network segments to deliver a software update, but you just want to make sure that while they are connected, there's nothing else malicious happening, and you want to be safe at ensuring you've done your due diligence and auditing them as well. So in one-shot mode, this is beautiful because, again, it can be installed once, it runs, and then it deletes itself. So there's no administrator privileges required. It's very lightweight, and it allows us to capture that information while we have this temporary user in the environment. And once they're gone, agent is gone, everybody's happy. Third mode, obviously, is that offline mode that we talked about before. Pretty important because in our environments, there are a lot of disconnected network segments. Not every segment can talk back to another server, to a device outside of it, or to the internet. So we've developed offline mode, which allows data to be collected locally, and we can then take it and export it from our sensor into the larger Guardian or Vantage system. So we still get to collect all the data, it's just not continuously reporting back. Allows us to still have this visibility while not being network connected. Time to deploy is something that we have always been very proud of and taken very seriously. We know our deployment time is the quickest of the tools in our space. So it's no surprise that Arc is following in those same footsteps. This is a great little use case we had where we've been testing it out. It's a single manufacturing location with 3 different buildings. I'm not going to necessarily read this eye chart. If anybody's interested to discuss this in more detail, we're happy to have a conversation at the booth. But what we've done is we've put together a lot of these sizing and comparison charts, which allow our customers to understand what the back-end effort is required to deploy this tool. Use case number 2 happened to be a cargo ship where we had a satellite internet connection. So this could also simulate, a lot of our energy, oil and gas customers have sites that are low bandwidth, high latency connections. So this would also accommodate those type of scenarios very comfortably. It's difficult to deploy cabling in these type of situations. Not only that, a lot of these environments, again, don't even have the network infrastructure to provide simple port mirroring. So in the absence of the infrastructure that can help us see what's going on, we can turn to our endpoint sensor. Third use case, like a remote substation. Again, we've got environments where our customers tell us, hey, I have one change outage a year, and it's 1 hour, and it's next February. What can we get done in that short period of time? So for instances like that, where we've got to deploy an agent, again, something like this doesn't require us to touch the network like some of our other solutions do. So this allows us to come in, be quicker to deploy, be safer to deploy, and give us the exact same results without having to interfere with any networking. Key features. So this is where I start to get really excited. So things like smart polling from the endpoint. Today, we've got something in the family called smart polling that allows my device to go out and actively communicate with different industrial devices in their native languages and protocols. So we go out very specifically, and I can ask for very detailed questions like, hey, what's your make, model, firmware, serial number? Do you have any line cards, any serially connected devices? We can extract all that information very safely. We're now bringing that functionality to this Arc sensor. So the ability to discover additional network assets based on the installation on a single machine in an isolated network. So instead of having to span a network at a remote substation now, by putting Nozomi Arc on one of the machines, we can gain that network visibility instead of having to monkey with the network. So bringing this functionality down to the endpoint is huge for us. Previously, this was all run from the tier of the Guardian, which typically sits in a data center or a control center. The second key feature that we're bringing to the table, I alluded to earlier, is our Sigma rules, right? So we use Sigma rules for threat detection, and these are applied to endpoint log files. So now we're able to understand mechanically what's happening on these endpoints and fold that into our threat intelligence to be able to paint a much larger picture of what the attack surface looks like. Third thing, which I think is one of the most important things that we're bringing to the table, is highlighting user activity correlation. This has always been a problem in OT networks. We're great at spotting communications from workstations to PLCs, but we're not very good at understanding who the users are behind that. That's one of the biggest things our customers have been asking for, again, which drives further development of products like this. So now we're able to correlate network traffic and abnormalities at the network layer with users. And once we can do that, now we've got a whole nother layer to dig into from an investigative perspective to understand the origin, the destinations, the users involved, the people. Was this actually a person, or were these credentials breached? Someone else using the credentials? So bringing in that user activity layer is key for us. And of course, the fourth thing, we talked about the USB monitoring. Again, this is something we've been missing in OT environments for a while now, for something that integrates with a larger platform. So now that we can start to keep track of this and feed this back into the rest of our security system, it makes for much quicker remediation and incident response. Again, user activity correlation. This is one of the things I like to talk about a lot. Accelerating the forensics. It just gives us a who. Oftentimes we know what happened, where it happened, and when it happened, but we don't know who was behind it. So this goes a long way at helping us understand the who, right? And of course, these things are only needed during a forensic incident. Nobody needs to know this generally moving forward, but when something does happen, it's one of the first things we often ask. Who was behind this? Who's doing this? So now we're bringing that to the table. And of course, now we can tie into other things like understanding the logic behind, hey, why is this person logged into two places at the same time? Or, in time zones that are 3,000 miles apart. So we can start to add another layer of incident response there. Our Sigma rules, again, something very new to the Arc endpoint. Just adding more context is the big takeaway, right? Being able to have access to those log files, to incorporate them into our decision-making and our logic trees, allowing us to tighten up on the forensic investigations. USB detection, again, can't really talk about this enough. Big thing is being able to now see these in real time and understand if there's data being transferred, what direction it's going in, what was transferred, and of course being able to send alerts to the other mechanisms within the security portfolio to potentially take an action on this. For those of you that do have a Nozomi appliance or the Nozomi platform today, this is very similar to what you would see. The agents now come up under appliances. So instead of just listing all the agents or all the appliances that we've got, we also list the remote sensors here. And in conclusion, why Arc? This is something big for us, and we want it to be big for our customer base as well. This is something that we've been asked of for many, many years now. So the big advantages for us are the increase in deployment speed, right? Again, we've got some very detailed use cases and the mechanics behind how to deploy. The velocity at which we can deploy is certainly very impressive. Real-time monitoring for workstations. Again, we've been doing this for a long time on the network. Now we have the ability to take it one step further and understand those devices that are plugged into the network. Huge advantage, not having to monkey with the network. So now we're not reliant upon a site doing a network infrastructure upgrade next year, or they don't own the switches, they don't manage the switches aren't technologically capable of giving us span or mirror, and so on and so on and so on. There's dozens of reasons. Something like this eliminates that entire conversation altogether. By us being able to deploy right at the end point, we get that visibility right from there. Again, tying into visibility on unmanaged networks. That's what it all leads down to at the end of the day. Monitoring devices offline, very important. Again, not everything's always connected to the internet or to an upstream management server. So where we have road warriors or devices that do go offline, we can still maintain the audit trail. And of course, getting that highly accurate contextual information. That's what we're all after at the end of the day, is the information. We're all in the business of understanding data points and metadata. We're past the point of looking at a threat in the respect how we used to. It's all about the data now. So this is just adding us another layer of data to be able to make faster decisions. And that concludes my talk on Arc today. Thank you very much. Any questions at this point? Yes, sir, in the front here. Just got a microphone coming to you, sir.
I love the fact you start adding the information about the users, but I have a GDPR issue, maybe. So how do you bypass the European data privacy stuff and Chinese and other? So, because again, it's good, right? But there are some legal...
Absolutely, great question. As you know, Nozomi is a European company. We do our research out of Switzerland, so GDPR and European Union laws are first and foremost on our minds. We have the ability to control where the data goes and where it stops going. So if we've got an infrastructure in a country, for instance, we can maintain that envelope of that user metadata not being passed outside of certain boundaries. So we can start to segment out the data, what goes where, what stays where, so it's not everything gets shared to everywhere, ends up on the internet. We've got a lot of knobs that we can turn to tune how much we can send and limit. Does that help? Great question. Thank you for asking. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Wonderful. Oh, we have one more? Or is that guy stretching? Oh, it is a question. Please, go ahead, sir.
So every time we talk about putting something past level 4, what OT vendors is this already certified to run against?
Excellent question. So we have strategic partnerships with the likes of Honeywell, Johnson Controls, who are also part owners of our company. So we have quite an extensive list of OEMs that are comfortable with doing this. In addition, we often collaborate with those OEMs. So we find ourselves going on joint ventures with them, educating customers together, and getting buy-in that way. But we absolutely have taken that into account. We know it's not easy to always touch an endpoint, so we're very sensitive. Schneider, Siemens, of course, the Rockwells, the Yokogawas, and then Honeywell, JCI. Great question, thank you. No, this is just one of my guys, we're just chatting. I think we're good then. Thank you, folks.